Story 1. Shortly after my father was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease, my formerly estranged half-brother quit his job and moved in to help take care of my dad. Though there really wasn't enough money, it was agreed to pay him around $300 a week to make up for his lost income. During this time, my half-brother abruptly acquired durable power of attorney and usurped medical and financial decisions. My mother and father had separate financial lives. Several documents relating to my dad's pension, which were now my half-brother's responsibility, were not turned in on time, resulting in my dad missing out on a one-time payout of $8,000 and lowering his pension payout by $300 per month. My half-brother then cleaned out my dad's remaining savings, about $3,000, not discovered until about a month later. 6 days later, our father took his own life in the basement. My dad left all of his insurance money and belongings to my mother. We children were left with only sentimental items. My half-brother was visibly upset and shaking when the will was read. He acknowledged that my mother was receiving everything and left. About a month later, we discovered the missing money. Though he broke no laws because he had power of attorney, we insisted he pay it back, even offering to let him make payments over a 2-year period. He refused, and we have had no contact for 2 years now. Little did he know that he was in my mom's, his stepmother's, will. He would have received half of what is currently a $250,000 estate. I suggested to my mother that she remove him from the will. She did, and I am now the sole beneficiary. He stole $3,000 now, only to lose out on $125,000 later. Story 2. I used to work in a disability shared accommodation agency. It's a job where you support 4-6 people with disabilities who share the accommodation. It's shift work, 2 clients per staff member during the day, 1 staff member on a sleepover at night. The rosters are 4-week rotating rosters. I was employed as a 0.75, meaning I work 75% of what is considered full-time, equating to 57 hours a fortnight. Working shifts was difficult, but the pay was good. I was working in a house I'll call Sunup. Sunup had 4 residents and 7 workers. Each house had a house supervisor, who reported to the cluster manager, who managed 6 houses. Cluster managers reported to the chief executive officer. By company policy, leave requests are first in, best dressed, meaning you need to put your leave in early to ensure you get it. I was transferred to Sunup from a 6-client house due to my qualifications and situations I cannot legally disclose. I worked for the first year, got to know staff, clients, house supervisor, etc. There was an obvious clique between 4 staff members. Each school holiday, 3 would apply for leave, and 1 would call in sick with a medical certificate covering the same amount of time. They would always rotate who was sick to hide what they were up to. They were friends outside of work who would party together. After a year, the house supervisor fell ill. One of the clique members, Karen, was appointed acting supervisor, and it went downhill. She tried reducing my hours and giving extra time to a friend. I pointed out that I'm contracted for 57 hours a fortnight, so I'm getting paid for 57 hours a fortnight. Her friends got extra shifts, were given the best shifts, and were all around favored by Karen. In January, I put in leave for March school holidays. Karen rejected it on the grounds that others had already submitted leave. Her clique all applied for this time. I left this alone. In March, I checked the leave calendar for the June school holidays. Each house had a leave calendar so management and staff could check whose scheduled leave is. It was empty. I submitted leave again, and it was rejected. Karen said, "Sorry, you were too slow. A, B, and C clique already submitted leave." The next day, the leave calendar showed this. In May, I checked the Christmas leave calendar, put in my leave, and sure enough, got the same result. This annoyed me as I have a family that I wanted to take on holiday. I spoke to the cluster manager, also a part of the clique, who said there was nothing I could do. No, I had taken no leave in 2 years. January the following year, the clique was on holiday. We had a gastroenteritis outbreak across our facilities, so we were short-staffed. All available staff, including the chief executive officer, were covering shifts. I was rostered on with the chief executive officer 1 shift. During the shift, he said to me, "You have a bit of leave accumulated. You should probably take some." Me. I put in 3 requests last year. All were rejected as others apparently already applied for those dates. Chief Executive Officer. Let's lock in your leave now. Me. Okay, how about 4 weeks over Christmas? I filled out the form, and the Chief Executive Officer signed it off. He filled out the leave calendar and put my application in Karen's pigeonhole. I was on sleep over that night, so I took my application, photocopied it for myself, and replaced it under the mountain of paperwork in her pigeonhole, knowing she wouldn't see it for a few months. In March, I checked the leave calendar and noticed my Christmas leave had disappeared, replaced with Karen, A, B, and C. I didn't say anything as I had a leave form with the Chief Executive Officer's signature. Fast forward to October, the original house supervisor passed away, and the acting supervisor was appointed permanent supervisor by the cluster manager with a mandatory 3-month probation. December comes around, the first week of my leave. I get a call from Karen. Where are you? Me, on leave. Karen, I didn't approve any leave. Get your behind to work now. I came in, and Karen chewed me out, stating she didn't get an application form. Karen went on to say, even if you submitted it, I would reject it as you should know by now that we always take 2 weeks in December and January. She wrote me up for insubordination. I worked that shift, and when Karen left, I emailed the Chief Executive Officer, filling him in on what happened. He called a meeting with me and Karen. Chief Executive Officer, what happened? Karen, cutting me off. Op took it upon himself to approve leave. I wrote him up for skipping work. Me. Actually, I submitted leave in January, while you were away. Karen. No, you didn't. Chief Executive Officer. Yes, he did. I approved it and added it to the leave calendar. Karen. Oh, we already had 4 staff booked on leave. Chief Executive Officer. Show me the leave forms. Karen. I destroyed them. Me, handing Karen my copy of my form signed by the Chief Executive Officer. Chief Executive Officer. Op is on leave. I'm going to sunup, and I'm investigating this situation. Op, my apologies. Go home. I'm extending your leave by an extra week. I went home. I came in 4.5 weeks later to be told that Karen had lost her promotion and was on thin ice. The Chief Executive Officer found out that Karen had been rejecting leave requests. She shredded my request without looking past the date. She deleted my leave from the calendar. The Chief Executive Officer told Karen that this bordered on fraud. The Chief Executive Officer also separated the clique to different houses. He changed the leave policy to state that he must sign off on leave requests in addition to house supervisor and cluster managers. He ensured that all staff had access to prime leave dates. Karen was fired 2 weeks later for failing audit requirements. Edit. To clarify why the Chief Executive Officer did grunt work. Funding bodies stipulated that during the day, 1 staff was required for every 2 clients. We were short-staffed across the board. There was a lot of juggling staff. All staff employed with the company who were not on leave were working in houses including Chief Executive Officer, cluster managers, administration. They were rostered on with qualified staff who took the lead. The Chief Executive Officer had social worker qualifications and social work experience, but no support worker experience. It was an extreme situation that could see funding withdrawn. The reason why he extended my leave by a week is that this incident took place on Monday, and the Chief Executive Officer meeting took place on Wednesday or Thursday, can't remember exactly. As I worked Monday and got called in for the meeting, I wouldn't have gotten my 4 weeks. Story 3. I worked at a fairly well-known restaurant in a small, northern New England city as an assistant manager. The owners were very successful restaurateurs with several successful non-chain establishments and spent maybe a day or 2 a month in our location. The rest of the time, there was a general manager in charge. We'll call her Jan. Jan was a tyrant. She was the kind of boss who soured the mood of the entire staff like a storm cloud hovering over us that never went away. Nothing was ever good enough, and the standards changed from day to day. On a good day, she would shut herself up in the office and then leave early. Good days were very rare and could turn into bad days at the drop of a dime. On bad days, you couldn't be perfect enough, and she would come up with new rules and regulations just to punish people. If a host called out sick, they were literal children, she would berate them on the phone and make them cry. If a cook made a mistake on a plate, she would humiliate them in front of the staff, accuse them of doing it on purpose, and then give us all the silent treatment for hours after. Seriously. If someone's cash out was off, even by a few cents, she would accuse them of theft and force me to cut down their hours. As a fellow manager, I was mostly spared her awful behavior, though I had to hear about her treatment from my staff almost every day. All of this was just run-of-the-mill bad boss stuff until it came time for our yearly staff evaluation meetings. This is where Raul enters the story. Raul was a hard-working dishwasher who had moved to our state from Puerto Rico a few years earlier and spoke English with some difficulty. Whenever I had to go over anything official with him, we would have a coworker translate between us to be sure we were both communicating clearly. Jan refused this courtesy to Raul. This made his evaluation pretty difficult. Raul managed to communicate to us that due to recent cuts in his hours, he would be forced to get a second job to pay the bills. Something about this absolutely set Jan off. She told him she would fire him if he dared. I could see plainly on the intake paperwork in front of me that Raul had been hired with the understanding that it would be a full-time position, so I pointed that out. Jan was furious but agreed through gritted teeth that if Raul agreed not to get a second job, she would bump his hours up to at least 35 hours a week. It was stated as clear as day, and I documented it in my daily manager logbook. Work went on as usual after that, and I didn't think much of this meeting again for a few months. Another time a while later, while filling out information for tax returns, Jan called me into the office. I could tell she had pulled the tiny room apart looking for something. "All the information about our Puerto Rican employees is gone," she told me with a mixture of panic and suspicion. I looked at the files in question, and they all seemed to be in order, so I was confused and told her I couldn't help. A few minutes later, I walked back into the office to find her arguing with Rosa, our most talented chef and a Puerto Rican native. Rosa was perfectly fluent in English. "No, Rosa." Jan was speaking to Rosa as though she were hard of hearing or mentally slow. "Where is your green card?" "What are you talking about?" Rosa was confused. "Are you an undocumented immigrant or something? Is that why one of you broke in here? To hide the proof?" Jan wasn't yelling, but her eyes were cold and flashing with rage. "What?" Rosa was starting to get angry now. It suddenly clicked for me, so I interrupted. "Jan, you do realize that Puerto Rico is a United States territory, right?" "Of course I know that," Jan snapped back. "Okay, so you know that Rosa has a social security number like any other American native." "Oh, right. Never mind. Rosa, you can go back to work." Jan did not apologize for accusing Rosa of theft. I was so done with this place after that. The last time I saw Jan was on my way out of Raoul's lawyer's office after giving a deposition about several labor laws she had violated. At least the ones that I knew about. Apparently, there were many others she had broken in front of other employees. She couldn't even look me in the eye. The best part, at my deposition, I learned that Jan was actually the one who was in the country without proper documentation. Her green card had recently expired. She was Canadian. She ended up being sent back to Canada as a result of this case, and no one has heard from her since. Raoul was granted 6 months of unemployment pay, plus the restaurant had to pay his legal fees. They closed that location not long after. Maybe they should hire their managers more carefully next time. Jan, if you're reading this, I hope you got your act together. I also hope you learned to wear closed-toe shoes behind the line. You wouldn't want to end up a huge, gigantic failure due to your own negligence, now would you?